everyone. I'm here with Shreya, and we're going to talk about imposter syndrome. Would you like to introduce yourself and talk about where people can find you?
So my name is Shreya Malik. You can find me on Instagram at Code with Shreya. You can find my website, codewithshreya.com. And my LinkedIn little URL shortened is SHRMAL. So linkedin.com/in/Shermal.
And what do you do?
So I work as a software engineer. I am currently living in sunny San Diego, California, which is where I also went to school. I've been doing backend Java development for almost 3 years now.
Nice. Yeah, we actually went to school together, but we were in different years. But I think that's so insane because we actually found each other again on Instagram, like so random.
Which is
So,
so weird. Yeah, no, because like I definitely saw her at Grace Hopper for a second.
yes,
Yeah, because I think we were part of the same organizations too, just like missed each other so many times.
right?
I love how that worked out though.
Yes, everything happens for a reason. So we're going to be talking about imposter syndrome today. So again, this is where you can find Shreya, and I'll also have her contacts at the bottom of each slide. So what is imposter syndrome?
So the way I define imposter syndrome is when you think that you don't deserve to be at the place that you're at or at a place that you're at, and you don't think it's because of your merit, but most of the time that's false.
Yeah, I completely agree. I consider imposter syndrome to be when, for some reason, you feel like a fraud, you feel like more people know more than you do, and that like you got to where you're at just based off luck. So, do you remember the first time that you experienced imposter syndrome?
I want to say the first time in the workplace that I remember experiencing it must have been my very first internship. And it was, I want to say, I was 19, so it was the summer after my second year of college. And at that point, since I was a bioinformatics major, we'd only learned so much computer science in our courses. And I was doing a software engineering internship. So when people on my team would talk about, different technologies and different ways of doing things, it was beyond overwhelming. And I remember just feeling so out of place and being like, there's no way I can learn all of this. There's no way I'm going to understand this whole system on the first day. And that was a bit of a memory for me. How about you?
So, I feel like in the beginning of college, because that's when I first started to learn to code, I kind of felt like I didn't fit in, but I never really felt like an imposter. It was more just like, I'm dumb, I don't know this. It was more of like those type of feelings. I know this is about to get a deep conversation. And you know what's crazy too, while I was like making these slides, I was thinking about it in high school. I didn't understand some things. Like when I took AP calculus, that was when things started to get hard for me. But I kind of never felt like an imposter. And I felt like it was because of the community I was in and the people I was with, that I wasn't like the only one that looked like me. So I didn't think like I was a fraud. I just thought like the smart people understood it, and it was just hard, if that makes sense.
No, it does. I was looking at the slides right before this, and I was trying to think of that too. And my first answer was AP classes, but then I realized I didn't feel like an imposter because every time I struggled with a concept, I had a friend that happened to understand that concept, and then the next month, like when they struggled with a concept, I was able to explain it back to them. So it was never an imposter feeling. It was more of a community, and just like you said, we all kind of looked similar to each other in a way. So
Yeah,
it never felt like an outsider type of feeling. Maybe it's because we were all the same age, whereas in the workplace, that's not always true. Question mark.
it's weird. I felt like, or even if me and my friend, we were both struggling, it was like that was one of my best friends. So we would just joke about it. Like, there's just a comfortability like with each other that it just never felt like, oh, I don't belong here. It was really just like, man, AP Calc is hard.
Yeah, like no judgment. Exactly.
Yeah.
Totally.
So then I wanted to ask you, have you ever asked yourself, can I do coding? Is it too hard? Is it for me? Any of those type of questions?
Like, have I ever asked myself that question?
Yeah.
I definitely have. And I'm not going to lie, like the first year I did work in the industry, I was working in a different tech stack as I do right now. And it didn't click for me as easily. So a lot of times, like probably a couple times a month, I would be like, all right, this coding thing's not going so great. Maybe one day I can be like a manager of engineers where I don't have to code on a day-to-day basis. And I was counting down the days basically, because online it was saying, you know, maybe stay in engineering for 3 years, 5 years. I was basically counting down the like months until we hit 3 to 5 years. But before that happened, at the end of like the first year, I switched tech stacks and things fell into place a lot better, a lot quicker. Things like I just understood them faster, and now I really enjoy it. Like I don't see myself leaving coding in, you know, that 3 to 5 year whatever amount people come up with arbitrarily. But I think as long as you continue to try and continue to try different things and are open to different opportunities, you will come across something that does click.
I totally feel that so much. I know for a while I was like, oh, I'm just going to become a PM, you know, I'm good with people, let me go that route, or just different things as well. Like I remember struggling in my classes, and I took one class and I knew like I was just not going to pass that class. So I was in the professor's office, I was like on the verge of tears. And I just asked him, I was like, should I continue doing this? I'm not doing well. And he was like, maybe you should try cognitive science. And I was like, okay, I'll try cognitive science. So I remember trying a course and I was like, okay, programming was hard, but a part of me kind of liked it. For me personally, cognitive science, I was just like, I'm tired of memorizing the different parts of the brain. Like,
I feel that.
that touches on something too, where something that I like about your Instagram in general is how vulnerable you are, and also how if people ask you questions like, I'm struggling, I don't know what to do, you're never like, maybe this isn't for you, maybe you should quit. The positivity that you bring, and yeah, just something
No,
I
thank you.
noticed.
Honestly, it's like I just want my page to look like something that I wish I had access to when I was struggling, like be it college, be it like initially. And you're right, because I don't think anyone should quit programming. I really don't, unless they find a different calling. But if
Mm,
they have an interest in it and they clearly want to be in it, I don't think they should quit because they don't get it. I don't think that really exists, because I feel like as soon as you start practicing and just take your time with learning the concepts, take your time with practicing and actually creating like an application, it's an addictive feeling. Like when something works and you're like, all right, now what can I get to work? Um,
yeah.
and I just want people to be able to experience it.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you said. Don't quit because it's hard. Quit because you tried it out, you know, you've been through it, and you're just like, meh, I can see myself doing something else. Just
Exactly.
because it's hard for everyone in the beginning. So, what are some tips to overcoming imposter syndrome?
So I have a couple that worked for me. I want to say the first one is to basically make a list of all the things that you've done right that you're proud of. And it doesn't even need to be coding related. It can just be, you know, accomplishments like, oh, I got a black belt in karate or whatever it may be for you. Just a list of accomplishments that required work. And then every time you feel self doubt, try to remind yourself of that list. I would honestly write it on a sticky note on my laptop or something and just be like, okay, I don't get this, but I was able to do X, Y, and Z. So using the strengths that I have, I will also overcome this as, you know, positive self-talk. And the way I try to think about that, like self-doubt that basically drives imposter syndrome, is that it's just another emotion, just like happiness or sadness, nervousness, anxiousness. Like we have ways to combat all of them. So why not, you know, try to master a way to combat imposter syndrome, because it's going to come back.
And I also believe conversations like this are so important. I remember I was in college and I talked to a professor, and I looked up to this professor so much. And she was like, to this day, I have imposter syndrome. And I just remember being like so shocked in that moment. I was like, what? How do you have imposter syndrome? And she mentioned how when she goes to talks about different research topics and she's not in that realm or she doesn't know a certain thing, she starts to feel it. So I think having conversations and like seeing people, I even had a coworker the other day said that he experiences imposter syndrome from time to time, and he's one of the coworkers I look up to. So it's like conversations like these, you hear that we have both and we both, you know, like experience imposter syndrome. And then something else that helped me, and it kind of ties into yours, was focusing on progress and not perfection. What I would do is like, for example, write down what I learned yesterday. And then today I'll write down like what I learned today. So instead of like creating checklists, like, okay, by the end of the day, I want the first part of the application to be complete. I wouldn't do things like that just because if I didn't accomplish it, I would feel bad. Instead, I'll be like, oh, I just learned about this new technology. or I learned about this new command on your computer, which is a shortcut. And like when that list just keeps building, it's like, okay, I might not be perfect, but I'm learning so much.
I love that. I will actually try that out. I didn't think to do that, but I will try that out. You did it daily. Do you still do it?
I still do it.
Oh my God, I absolutely love that. Yes, I do have a notebook for work, and I should really actually do that. I think that'd be a great addition to the workday.
Yeah, it helps so much, especially at the end of the day, too. All the different things you learn, it's just like, it's crazy how much we learn, too, just on a daily basis being in tech.
Honestly, I feel like I spend like half the development time if I'm struggling like on Google, and I learn so much peripheral stuff that then becomes useful for something later. I feel like it'd be so helpful to write that down.
Mm-hmm.
Resources.
Yeah, I'm gonna show you a picture of like all the notebooks I have. You're gonna
Yes, yes,
actually
please.
laugh.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Okay, so why do you think imposter syndrome is huge in tech?
One of the things that I think causes it to be so big is there's a lot of like social media out there where you can see how well someone else is doing, and it's really easy to like make comparisons, especially sites like Blind, or those like subreddits where people are talking about how they're 2 years of experience in and making 400,000, like crazy, packages. But that's usually like A, people who are lying because no
Yes.
one's fact checking, or B, like, 1 or 2 or 3% of people. But it's important to remember that you have a different path from those people. Most of those people are living in a crazy high cost of living area, so their rent probably cost them 6 figures on its own. So they're going to need that money anyway. So I think it's important to remember that you are on your own path and that you'll be successful on it if you put the work in. And the negativity that comes with all of that comparison just needs to be somehow cut out. And personally, the way I cut it out is by never downloading Blind. I just don't, nope. But that's just me.
And it's like sometimes people lie as well. I remember in there was a specific time in college where we were like all studying for a test. And my friend and I decided like we're gonna pull like all nighters this whole week. Like we're gonna stay in the library, like we're gonna do well. And then there was someone else that would see in the library all the time. And then it was the day of the test, and this person was like, "Yeah, I barely studied." And me and my friend looked at each other like, I swear, we saw you like 5 tables away, like that whole week. So I don't know why in tech, but people like to have this kind of like persona that like everything is just easy for them, or I don't know why, but that is something I noticed.
Did you find that growing up as well? I know you mentioned you grew up in the Bay Area, right?
Mm-hmm.
I did too. So I feel like even in high school or middle school, there'd be people that love to talk about how they
Oh.
never study and get A's, how they, never study for an AP test and pull a five. And they
Mm-hmm.
love talking about it and bragging about it and just making everyone around them like, feel like they're so intelligent. And that like doesn't necessarily translate into anything productive. But I feel like that started really early on, like growing up in the Silicon Valley. I don't know if that ties in for your experience as well.
Yeah, you know what? I started to compare myself more to others like when I was in college than before. So, and I feel like that completely adds to imposter syndrome when you start comparing your level of knowledge with someone else. So it could have been happening, but I think in high school, especially, I did not have to put in as much work as I did in college. Like, I just remember topics just came more naturally to me. So, like, even if someone were like, oh, I didn't study, I was just kind of like in my own bubble, anyways, because I was like doing fine. So, I wouldn't really, I feel like, take that in. So, this is a very interesting question. We actually got this one from Instagram. And it is, has imposter syndrome ever pushed you to make an irrational decision that negatively affected your life?
Yes,
Oof.
it has. And that is a loaded question. I had to think about this one. I'd say it has pushed me to not apply for certain jobs, to not try and reach for certain opportunities. And all of those are missed learning opportunities. So, had I gotten those opportunities, I could have learned from them. And that is how it negatively affected my life.
Completely agree.
Yeah.
I wouldn't work on certain projects just because I thought that I wouldn't be able to complete it and I didn't want to be like found out as a fraud. So I just wanted to like stick to what I know. Even when it was time to apply to different internships and jobs, I'd be
Mhm.
like, girl, why you even don't play yourself? Like, and that's so detrimental to like talk down to yourself like that. But yeah, imposter syndrome has definitely pushed me to not take on opportunities. It's crazy. Like even me teaching Python like on Instagram, that is such a huge thing for me just because I would never think that like I would be in a position that would actually like help someone learn a coding topic. Like
Very.
putting out, yeah. But
But
it's
it's really great that you took that opportunity because now you've gotten better at TikTok, I'm sure. Better, well, okay, I mean, better at using another technology. Yeah, of course. But you've forced yourself to think in a different way than you normally would. Because
yeah.
at work, I'm not thinking, how can I explain this to a kid? I'm thinking, how can I make my stuff work? And how can I get keyways test cases to pass? That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Never, oh, how can I like make this so clear in my head that I could explain it to a kid?
Yeah, and there's actually a quote that it's like, if you know it well enough, you'll be able to like explain it to a 5-year old. I'll try and find what the quote is, but I find that so true. Like people who explain it the simplest are people who have like just great knowledge about it. Like when they can find the right metaphors and analogies and just bring it all together, it like really shows how deep of an understanding they have on that topic.
And it's cool you're moving towards it.
Yeah, and it's like I was scared that like, oh, I might say something wrong and people might come after me or like be in the comments like, what are you talking about? But it's like, yeah, if I do happen to say something wrong, great. Now I learn it. You know what
No,
I'm
that's true.
saying?
That's fair.
So that's like the mindset I have. So this is a question I actually got from the Code in Place course that I helped with. And it is, I'm pretty much a perfectionist most of the time. This is a bane in my life because when I'm not getting something right, I just kind of get frustrated and in the process lose motivation. I don't know if any of you guys know this feeling, but if you do, I love tips on how to stay focused on progress than perfection. So I kind of wanted to ask you, like, what do you do when you're frustrated and how do you keep the motivation going?
Honestly, it's a really common feeling to feel frustrated because coding isn't easy. It's not a natural thing to wrap your head around. And frankly, it's not really taught in schools. Like, if you're great at like seventh grade, like social studies or seventh grade science in general, it's because you've done sixth grade like level, like you've done a prior level, like it builds up. However, for computer science, that's not the case. Like you weren't taught like a build up every year. So it's really easy to kind of lose momentum, I'd say, to get frustrated. But I think the thing that I like to do is reconnect with my why. So a why is why you're doing this. So for me, it's a vision of myself maybe 10 or 15 years down the line, hopefully, speaking in at conferences or talks or inspiring people to stay in tech, to get into tech, and kind of providing people with mechanisms to get over things like imposter syndrome or at least help them manage it. And that's my why. And I know that in order to get to that point, I need to do certain things. I want to feel confident as a software engineer myself. And if I overcome this hurdle that's frustrating me right now, that will get me closer to that goal. So just remembering that usually helps me a little bit.
I love that so much. That reminds me of how I actually keep a book of Michelle Obama on my desk just because when I see her, I really just feel motivated to keep going just because the way she inspires me, I hope to inspire someone like that one day. So it's just like the perfect motivation. And then also when I'm frustrated that I'm just like so done with looking at whatever I'm looking at, I just like set a timer and say like for the next 30 minutes or the next hour, I get to do whatever I want, watch some Netflix, like eat
Yes.
some good food, whatever. But then when that timer goes off, I set a timer of like, okay, so for 20 minutes, focus on this, and then you can have another break. And I just kind of like continue that cycle.
Yes, I really like that. Just take a break. Don't think about it for a second. Sometimes I like to mind numb myself with like TikToks or just
Yes.
scroll through something that just doesn't require my brain for a few minutes. And it just allows me to like, forget about whatever it was that was frustrating me and come back to it with like a fresh set of eyes.
Right. It's crazy too after like 2 videos, you completely forget what you were frustrated about.
Because you're always laughing and like that algorithm is on point.
Okay, so these next two questions, I'll show you this one and the next one because they're kind of related. But this is being a woman, how to overcome self-doubt. And then the next one is what are some ways to improve confidence? So you can talk about either, both, but yeah, this one is really interesting too because like being a woman, how to overcome self-doubt. The only thing I could really think of is that I have a good like network of women that I'm like connected to. You're part of my network.
Yeah.
And like we even have a Slack group and we just like message each other and we're always like supporting each other's like whatever you're doing and like what you're posting. So I feel like being surrounded with people, especially people who are positive.
Mhm.
uh, I remember being around negative Nancy's just do not work for me because it just brings like me down. So what do you think is like some good advice?
No, I totally agree with that. So I think one thing that helps me with self doubt, like you said, is to have a good support system. So be that a group of women in tech, which there's plenty of. I found a huge support system through Instagram. Like you said, we're part of the same group, and it's amazing.
He's in tech.
Yes. Before this, though, I was also part of Lean In, Women in Tech, the San Diego group, and that's been a great support system because I get like a very, supportive vibe from a lot of women that are more experienced than me, and they don't know me, but they want me to succeed. So I love it. It's like monthly therapy for me. So that's like a nice, like local in-person kind of setup that I have. And also, if you have access to this at your company, if there's like a woman at X company group, join it. Join it immediately. But utilize the resources that you already have at hand for sure. And I think the more community that you have and the more people you have rooting for you, and might even just be like non-tech, like your family members, your
Yeah.
friends, significant others that are not in tech, they're also there to root for you. So when you're feeling down and self-doubt, they'll be there to remind you of the times that you succeeded.
Another quote I like is like, don't compare your chapter 1 to someone else's like chapter 20 or
Yeah,
something like that. Like
yeah.
you are going on your path, and as long as you keep at it, you will accomplish whatever you want. So
Mhm.
when you're having self-doubt, I just really believe to just don't compare yourself to others, and also just having a growth mindset in general. Something that someone else said that I really like is like, oh, just say like, I don't know Java yet, like putting yet at the end of it, just because like if you're trying to learn it, you will, but it's just at the moment you don't. And it's just going to take you some time. And then, yeah, this is our last question. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for coming, by the way. This was
Yes,
amazing.
this is one of my favorite things to talk about, and I love how like full circle this whole conversation has come. Just from I remember seeing you like in the dungeon at our school like years and years ago, and I didn't think I'd ever see you again, to be honest.
Yeah. We
But
really called it the dungeon too.
I did.
Like it was like in a basement. There was like no windows. It was it was like crazy.
I think they remodeled though, right? I haven't been back since.
They were remodeling. Yeah. Hopefully it's better, but the dungeon was serious. It was some
It was
serious.
like actually like basement, and you just don't know. Like I've multiple times like walked in at like 9 p.m. and walked out at like 7 a.m. and I'm like, I didn't even know.
Yeah.
No sunrise happened. Oops.
Woo.
Touching on the confidence thing, something that helps, or something that I've noticed is that sometimes when people have like a technical conversation on something that I don't know, it'll scare the heck out of me. Because I'm like, what if they ask me about it next? Or is this something I should have looked up by now? Like, what am I doing? And I think something that really helps me is learning it, or not even necessarily learning it, but if something scares me, I'll, that night go home and Google it and spend like 10 minutes maybe understanding that technology, like what it does, what it's useful for, and in what cases it's not useful. So at least I can talk about it. So hearing about it doesn't scare me necessarily. Like I can have a conversation. And then if it is something that I feel like will benefit me, my career, my job, or anything at all that I'm doing, then I'll take the time to learn it. And then boom, I'm not scared at all. That's just,
Love that.
one of the easiest ways to kind of get rid of that lack of confidence when someone talks about a skill that I don't know about and it makes me feel scared. It's like, let's find a way to eradicate it.
So this is where you can find Shreya. Here's her IG. If you look at her IG, I comment on like everything. So you
Yeah.
guys are really gonna like it. Her website and LinkedIn as well if you want to network and stay connected. It was so great having you. Thank you so much for doing this. And yeah,
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And this is a really cool opportunity.
Okay. Bye.
Yeah.